Welcome to our Money Mastery Live. This month's topic is money in relationships. Focus primarily on money in marriage. Okay. My question for you guys is raise your hand or give me a yes in the chat box if you are either married, plan to be married, hope to be married, or marriage is somewhere in your future. Okay. Awesome. And I also want you to understand while I'm going to focus on marriage, this is just good stuff to take away for any type of interaction with money with anyone. Okay. I think all of us have had some type of, I'll call it negative interaction with another human being in terms of money. All right. It's one of those things that for whatever reason causes a lot of issues. Okay. Now, money, I don't know if you guys know this. Most of you have because you probably heard me say it a bunch of times. It's one of the leading causes of divorce in this country. Okay, up there with like infidelity, up there with differing beliefs in certain things, money, and more importantly, differences of opinion or differences of how to view money, how to deal with money is up there for one of the leading causes of divorce. Roughly 70% of married couples in America experience financial tension in their relationships. Okay, now what I'm going to go over today, I'm not a marriage and family therapist, guys. I'm not going to be helping solve marriages or anything like that. However, I've walked with a lot of couples through this journey of mastering their money, moving into better directions, and most importantly, doing so together. Okay. I have the crazy belief that your marriage is more important than your money. I know. I'm the financial coach. Money should be everything, right? No. Okay, marriage to me is far more important. Okay, but as we all know, and the reason why you're all here is finances is a big part of that, of life and of our marriage as well. Okay, and so if we don't handle this topic, the marriage will suffer just as much. Okay, so what I'm going to go over with you guys today, guys, I know I don't like long presentations. I want to keep it short, sweet, to the point, and I would rather have some time to chat with you and go over questions. But when I was putting this together, I was just thinking about what are some of the big picture ideas and concepts in my experience over the years. Not necessarily in my own marriage. I've been married for a little over 10 years now. But again, I'm not trying to sit here and say that I know anything more about marriage than you guys, okay? Because I don't. But what I do want to bring to the table is what my experience in coaching couples through this journey have been and some of the key nuggets that I have found that helps them with being successful in this journey. Okay. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. I don't want, 33-year-old Fern here telling you guys about marriage and whatnot. That's not what I'm trying to do here. This is coming from my experience for almost a decade now of coaching couples through this process. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive in. I got 4 get clears for you guys. The first one I want to dive into is get clear on your roles. One of the things that I've experienced over my years is that spouses tend to want to have a 50-50 divide when it comes to finances. And in my years of doing this, I've never seen one couple be able to do that fully. Okay. And this is kind of true of like all areas of marriage, right? The whole like 50-50 equal split of everything doesn't really work. It doesn't really apply, right? I'm going to get into kind of some whys here in a second here. But when it comes to our financial journey, you guys have heard me use this terminology. There's typically one budget nerd in the house, right? There's typically one person who kind of likes this stuff a little bit, or maybe has a little bit more of a lean to being good at it. Whether you like it or not, you're better at it. Okay. And typically what I've seen is there's one budget nerd, and then for whatever reason, the other spouse who absolutely hates it, doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. That's what I've seen in my in the different marriages that I've walked with. Now, that's the same in my household. I'll let you guess who the budget nerd is in my house. Okay. My wife, while she's a great teammate in all of this, and I'll get into like some of that again, she doesn't like this stuff. She doesn't care about this stuff. She doesn't have a passion or interest in this stuff. And that's okay. I want you all to understand that right now. If you, which I'm kind of guessing you are the budget nerd in your household, and your spouse is like, doesn't care, doesn't want have any interest, doesn't want to look at the budget, anything like that, I want you to hear it from me. That's okay. I have a lot of students who get frustrated because they're like, my wife or my husband doesn't even want to look at it. They don't like talking about this stuff, anything like that. That's okay. Okay. And I'm going to go over some practical things here on how to make sure you guys are working as a team. But I want you guys first get clear on your roles. Are you the budget nerd or are you not? And it's okay for you both not to be fully 100% gun ho about this stuff. Okay? Again, expectations going into the practical stuff is very important. The next kind of expectation, get clear on your strengths. Okay? More often than not, kind of in the same lane of there being a budget nerd and then a not budget nerd, or like a budget, like a version, if you will. Typically, what I've seen in marriages, not always, but typically, we tend to see a saver with a spender. Okay. Or vice versa, however you want to say it. It's very normal for there to be kind of that dynamic. Now, I have seen couples who are both spenders and couples who are both savers. I have seen that. Okay. Not that there's one way that's better or the other. But one of the big things that I want to kind of highlight here for you guys is that I want you to focus on understanding each other's differences and identify the need for both. Now, this is something I've learned in my own marriage over the years, and you guys in our discussion can tell me if you've experienced this at all. But in my early days of marriage, I used to think of my differences between my wife and I as like problems. Why doesn't she see things the way that I do? Right? Why doesn't she do things the way that I do? Right? I used to see her differences as me being right and her being wrong. Okay. Can I get an amen from anybody? All right. But one of the things I've learned over the years is I have noticed that our differences actually are complementary. Okay. When we come together as a couple, you don't want the same person as you. You don't want somebody who thinks the same way, right? Who does things the same way, because part of the value of marriage, and again, this is going into my own belief systems, is that it is meant to grow you. It's meant to complement you. You two are meant to come together as a team, right? And what a team is hey, you're good at this, I'm not so good at it. You're good at this and I'm not so good at it. So let's come together so that we can kind of hit everything. Okay. And so I want you to understand the obvious one is the saver spender dynamic. Okay. I want you to understand there's value to both of those. Okay. And I want you to kind of explore the differences between you two, again, financially speaking, right? I'm not trying to venture too far into marriage advice here, but financially speaking, identify the differences between you guys. And instead of viewing them as problems or conflicts, begin seeing why you guys need both of these perspectives. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, a saver is going to have a pretty boring life. Okay, a saver is going to tend to start leaning into what I call idolatry of money, right? Where they begin hoarding it and not wanting to do anything with it. And it's all about accumulation and collection. But their life really has no fruit behind it, right? Because money is meant to work for us. But when we begin kind of getting into that mindset of accumulation and hoarding it all, that's more of money having control over us. Okay. Now, the spender, if left unchecked, we're going to have some issues financially. All right. I think this one is the more obvious in the con section of it. However, what a spender does bring to light and the value that it brings is life into the financial situation, right? That release of, hey, we don't need to accumulate all this money, but we can release some for the benefit of our life. Okay. However, when you kind of see these next to each other and you start seeing them as a complementary nature, what do you start seeing is balance. Okay. And when you begin leaning one way or the other, right, it can cause issues. Okay. Now, this is just one kind of example. I want you guys to kind of think about the differences. And instead, again, I'm going to repeat this. Instead of seeing them as conflicts, begin seeing as how can they be complementary? How can these be complementary for our marriage? Okay. Get clear on your strengths, right? Which byproduct means get clear on your weaknesses as well. And begin looking at them as how can we complement each other? Okay. Now, let's get practical. Okay. These are more of kind of setting expectations, having proper mindsets, and kind of avoiding some of the negative going into the practical side of things. Okay. So the first practical get clear that I have is get clear on your goals. Okay. And one of my recommendations for you guys is to have at least one monthly meeting in person, sit down, give each other a hug, hold each other's hand, talk to each other, not texts or emails or anything like that. I'm sure we all do that throughout the month, but I want this meeting to be a sit down meeting with you guys together. Okay? And I want you guys talking about where are we going together? Okay? Where are we going financially speaking? What are we trying to accomplish here? Okay? A lot of times couples get kind of stuck in the mindset or the process of survival. All right. Can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down from you guys if you guys have felt that in your life? Where we're not really talking about things, we're not talking about goals or where we going because honestly, we're just trying to get through. Okay. And so long as that is the mindset, and so long as that is the conversation or lack thereof, well, guess what the result that's going to follow that? Okay. If you're not wanting to be stuck in survival, begin discussing where we want to go. Okay. Now, the clear practical steps for our students who know our system, what we want to focus on here is when we build out the plan each month, right, on the My Plan page of the software, and you see where our cushion's at, our projected cash flow. I want you to sitting down and discussing what are we going to do with that. Okay. The key to, I want you to remember this, the key to obtaining buy in from both parties is humility. What does this mean? Well, when you're discussing what to do with that cash flow or projected cash flow, you have ideas of what the best thing to do is, while your spouse will have their own ideas of what the best thing to do is. And without humility, how's that conversation going to go? Not very good. It's a kind of argument, right? And typically, when we go down this route, emotion comes into the picture, which you guys have heard me talk a lot about removing emotion from this process. Okay. But when emotion comes into the picture, now we start hearing, well, you just think I'm dumb. You don't think I know anything. Like you just want to save all the time. You never want to live life. You guys ever heard these before? Okay. The key to this step right here is humility. And I'm going to kind of take this a step further. If you consider yourself the budget nerd of the family, what I'll also give a title of is you are the financial leader of the family. Do you hear me? When you are the budget nerd, aka the steward, aka the money manager of your family, that's a massive responsibility, right? And you are leading your family in that right. Great job. Okay. And yes, it gets heavy sometimes. We can talk about that too. All right. But as the leader, it's your job to get your spouse's buy in. Okay. Give me a yes or no in the chat box if you guys who are married or have been married or been in a relationship, and if you are the budget nerd, have been trying to go somewhere with your finances, but didn't have your spouse's buy in, and it just felt like you guys playing tug of war. You're trying to go one direction, they're trying to go the other direction, and it's just not, we're not getting anywhere. Okay. As the budget nerd, as the leader, it's your responsibility to get that buy in. I want you guys to hear me loudly and clearly. Okay. If your spouse is not bought in to the plan, whose responsibility is it? Yours. Okay. Now, why do I emphasize this so much? Because again, a lot of the couples I've worked with, a lot of the complaints that I get is, hey, I'm doing all this. I'm doing this tracking. I'm building the plans. I'm doing all the things. And my spouse still just goes and does whatever they want. Well, guess what my response is going to be? Whose fault is that? You haven't gotten the buy in. And again, what is the key to that? Humility. What this might look like, guys, is that your spouse, the non budget nerd, might have the most ridiculous ideas of what to do with that cushion. Maybe they won't. Sometimes they will. And when they do, you go with it. You go with it. I give the joke of what if my spouse wants to just buy, I have $600 of cash flow and they just want to get $600 of shoes. Okay, get $600 of shoes. Why? Well, coach, I got debt to pay off. I should be saving. Why would I get $600 of shoes? Here's the mindset and the frame that I want to give you guys. Okay. And I want you to give me a yes or give me thumbs up and thumbs down because we're going to get crazy with the comments here. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Is 3 months of foolishness of buying shoes, again, that's my example. Sorry if you like shoes and you buy a lot of shoes. That's just the example I give. Is 3 months of foolishness financially worth decades of buy in and teamwork together in a marriage? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Let me ask this. Is 6 months of foolishness, money down the drain, worth decades of teamwork and buy-in together? Let's take it a step further. Is 12 months worth of foolishness financially worth decades? We're talking 10, 20, 30 years of teamwork and buy-in together. Okay, the reason why I kind of get dramatic about this like this is because that 12 months of foolishness can feel like the biggest waste. Things are not going right. I'm not being successful, whatever it might be. But I need you to understand the cost is worth the reward of getting on the same page and getting that buy-in with your spouse. I can't emphasize this enough. And yes, for some of you, it's going to take months. And guess what? For some of you, it might take years. But what's the alternative? If you guys have struggled financially with your spouse, and this has been an argument, this has been a tension, you already know what that path feels like. That's an option for you to keep going down that path. But the other option, while it's not going to be sunshines and rainbows, because you guys know I don't promise that ever, there is light at the end of that tunnel. There is hope there that one day you guys will be on the same page. You guys will get on the same page of what we're doing together financially and be able to start taking those steps forward together. Because I'm telling you right now, steps forward financially without your spouse, without being on the same page, with that still being turmoil, who cares? Who cares? At least that's my perspective of marriage. Okay. So again, get clear on your goals. Where are we going? What are we doing? As the budget nerd, step into it with humility. And if you're not the budget nerd on this call, step into it with humility as well. Okay. Humility needs to go both ways. But as the leader, as the budget nerd in this relationship, you start. Okay. All right. Next, get clear on your progress. Okay. Once you guys get to the point of being clear on your goals and where we're going, okay, even if it's shoes, we need to get clear on our progress. Are we sticking to that plan? All right. Because again, hey, we have $600. We're going to go ahead and get you shoes this month. Here's what we need to do to be able to execute that. Okay. Now that you got the buy-in, now we need to kind of start moving in the direction of here's what we need to do to stick to that plan. Because you replace that $600 for shoes with any other goal, this process still remains. Does that make sense? Okay. And this is kind of the end goal that I want you guys to get with this buy-in part. Okay. Eventually, whether it's 2 months, 6 months, 12 months, we already talked about why it's worth it. But eventually, what the end goal is with your spouse is when they turn around and say, well, what do you think we should do with it? That's when you know we're on. That's when you know now we're working as a team. Okay. But until we get to that point, we need to have, this is my practical advice, a minimum of 3 messages per week. Okay. Now, messages can be via text. That's how I do it. Email, if that's what you do, or some basic communication, right? Like verbal communication. However, I don't prefer verbal communication. What I would recommend, practically speaking, this is what I do and what I recommend. Take a screenshot of your pacer. You guys know what our pacer is in our system, right? Monthly bills, whatever. I got that, baby. Don't worry. I'm the budget nerd. I'll take care of that. Make sure bills are paid. You don't got to worry. But where I need your help with in sticking to this plan are those daily expenses. And I would recommend getting ahead of it. Don't just start sending that pacer over without any words. I did that. And what I got response after day 3 is, why do you keep sending me these? What am I doing wrong? Like, oh, shoot, maybe I should have communicated first, right? I'm going to send it to you every week, right? I do it daily. Okay. Every day I update, I send the screenshot over so my wife knows where we're at. Okay. But I recommend a minimum of 3 per week for the same reason that that pacer gives you feedback on how we're doing, right? How's your spouse going to know if you're not communicating that with them? Okay. So at least 3 per week of here's where we're at in that plan. Okay. Communicate consistently via the numbers. This is another clear point here, guys. When you, let's just say, for example, in month 1, your spouse isn't sticking to the plan because why would they? Right? It's month 1. We're just getting used to this. We're just getting into this rhythm. Instead of saying, hey, babe, you overspent, or hey, babe, like you screwed up, just say, hey, babe, here are the numbers. Okay. As you can see here, we went over on this category, went over here. And so that 600 that we had for shoes, now we only have 100. Okay. Let the numbers, and again, I didn't say you overspent or you did this. We overspent. We did this. And this is the result that now we only have 100. So we can only get $100 worth of shoes. Okay. And again, the shoes make this example feel silly, but what you want your spouse to feel is, oh, like, okay, so I get less of the thing that I want because I didn't stick to this plan. So what is this doing? It's reinforcing them to be like, okay, next month, I want the full 600 of shoes. So I know now what I need to do. And now, as this happens, communication between the two of you continues. But what are you going to maintain at all times? Humility. Okay. Typically, if you're the budget nerd, your spouse isn't very good about this stuff. That's okay. You're a team. Okay. You lead from the front. Okay. But again, I really want to emphasize via the numbers. As soon as you start getting off the numbers, the conversation becomes, I'm going to use nerd speech here, less quantitative and more qualitative. Okay. Qualitative evokes emotion. Instead of saying, hey, we went over by 40, and you say, hey, you spent too much, that's qualitative. What response are you going to get from each of those? Numbers are numbers. They're fact. They're black and white. They're going to communicate clearly. Let them. You don't need to say anything. Okay? All right, guys. Obviously, I can talk about this for forever because there's just so much that goes into this. Hopefully, some questions are popping up, right? Practical questions, mindset-related questions. Write those down. We're going to have some time for Q&A and discussion, okay? If you are watching the recording of this, and you're tired of doing this journey alone, I want you to consider joining our Money Masters membership. This is something that everybody here live on this call is part of. And this is where we walk alongside of you in this journey. As you know, doing this alone sucks. And if you are married and you're having these struggles, walking through that with somebody to be able to kind of guide you and be that third party voice of reason sometimes, it's going to help smoothen that journey together. Okay. We got live support calls and coaching calls every single month and weekly as well. 4-step cash flow system and our Metanoia software to execute all of the systems that you heard me talk about through this. One-on-one onboarding call with your dedicated success coach to make sure you're perfectly clear on how to be successful here. Bonus training and resources and stuff like this. And honestly, just the best environment for changing the trajectory of your life, financially speaking. Now, let's go over our discussion questions, guys. And what I'd like to challenge you on, we have a good amount of people here, but enough, I think, for us to kind of give a rotation. I want to challenge you guys to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Okay. I want to challenge you. I'm going to, at the end of this, ask for you guys to share. Okay. And I want to see every person share. Can't make you, not going to try to make you, but I want to challenge you guys for every one of you to share. Unmute yourself and answer these 3 questions for us. Okay. I'm not prying too deep, I'd hope, right? But I want to kind of get you thinking and moving in the right direction. All right. 1, would you say you are or would be, if you're not quite married, the budget nerd in a relationship? Okay. Why or why not? Okay. Are you typically more of a saver or a spender? Okay. How has this come up in current or past relationships? Again, I just want to get you reflecting a little bit. All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your communication about money with your significant other and why? All right. Up to this point, hopefully you got some good nuggets from today's calls that you're planning on executing, right? Right. Okay. But up to this point, how would you rate the communication so far? And why? Especially reflecting on why I gave you those practical nuggets, right? Reflect on like how it's been and kind of where you can see that things may have been good or not good. Okay. Again, are you the budget nerd, spender or saver? And then how would you rate your communication? All right. As always, guys, I want you to remember that this journey was not meant to do alone. Okay. Stay involved, stay engaged, and let's continue growing together as a community.